So yeah, a French archaeologist working in Iran started decipherment in 2017, and in 2020, himself with Kambiz Tabibzadeh, Matteo Kervran, Gian Pietro Basello, and Gianni Marchesi announced that they have deciphered Linear Elamite. We do not hear such news often, so I was so fascinated about this, and this is why in 2021 I joined ANRT in Nancy, France, to work on Linear Elamite as part of the Missing Script program. This is a center founded in 1985. A research center focuses on type and editorial research. So my project at ANRT was to design an inclusive typographic solution based on comprehensive research and careful analysis of the inscriptions that would make the digital transmission and reproduction of Linear Elamite possible. Among others, it would help archaeologists, linguists, philologists, historians, and type researchers during the process of redacting and publishing their research. It could also help preserve this ancient script and give it a new life through contemporary mediums. In this project, I worked with François Dosset. This allowed me to have access to the most relevant and recent archaeological data. So 1 year after, in 2022, the 5 archaeologists published the official decipherment article in Zeitschrift für Assyriologie journal. In this article, they explained that it is an alpha syllabary writing system, a very efficient one that works with 5 vowels, 12 consonants, and 66 syllables. I think the decipherment is of great importance because it may change our understanding on our current understanding on development of writing. As far as we know, it is the oldest phonetic writing system, showing that the phonetization of writing was achieved from the earliest stages of its invention, and much earlier than anywhere else. For example, they were using still logograms in Egypt and in Sumerian and Egyptian hieroglyphs. But to understand where this writing system comes from, we should go back to the emergence of writing. As one of my colleagues, Kaveh, explained, as far as we know, the writing was emerged in 3 different regions in Near East. What we are focusing here is the Elam civilization. It was an ancient one. Neighboring Mesopotamia, was located in the present-day Iran. It covered nearly the entire southern half of the Iranian plateau in the late 3rd millennium BCE. The territory went through a lot of changes, and in the Achaemenid period, about 500 BCE, it reduced to only Susa. The particularity of this civilization was its confederated governmental structure, that different settled and nomadic populations were united within the structure's complex mechanisms. The name Elam does not come from the local population. It is the name coined by Mesopotamian scribes. The Elamite called their country Hatemti. They used different writing systems to transcribe the language, the Elamite language. First, it was Proto-Elamite, one of the first known writing systems. And then we have Linear Elamite, and then later it was replaced by cuneiform due to the power hegemony of Mesopotamia. So this can be the simplified diagram of evolution of writing in the Near East. And this is where Linear Elamite is located. There is a small debate on this connection between Proto-Elamite and Linear Elamite. Some scholars believe that it is the evolution of Proto-Elamite, the writing system, but some others, they say we don't have enough evidence to support this claim. So to put it simply, this is the 2 different paths that the writing has gone through in the Near East. Again, this connection is the place of a debate. So this writing was discovered in the beginning of 20th century in Susa Acropolis in Iran. Archaeologists found a writing system which was later named Linear Elamite on different materials. It contains simple and geometric signs found on stone, on clay, on metal, and there is one gold seal. Some inscriptions read from right to left and the others from left to right. Not all of the objects have good legibility. Some inscriptions, those especially in stone, are severely weathered, making it more difficult to analyze. Up to now, we have 43 objects found with this inscription. They are named by alphabetical order from A to Z and A' to R'. These are the archaeological sites that these objects were found. Now they are found in different places in the world, and unfortunately only 6 of them are in Iranian museums. Making the first linear Elamite typeface was a delicate task, as it would be the first contemporary representation of this writing system. So transposing the typographic rules from one system to another would have been irrelevant. So in my encounter with Linear Elamite, I tried to be as neutral as possible and tried not to base my design choices on Latin or Arabic typographic rules that I'm used to. Reviving an ancient writing system requires reconsideration of modern typographic notions such as geometry, weight, type color, proportions, contrast, baseline, etc. I think these concepts should be evaluated based on the nature of the writing system, but should also be adapted to the contemporary mediums such as print and screen. Almost all of the Linear Elamite signs seem to be abstract and very geometric, but since they are engraved by hand, they are not completely regular. So my first instinct was to design symmetrical and consistent geometric signs. It was an instinctive approach, but was this really the intention of the engravers? Was making perfectly geometric signs the goal of the Elamites? For us today, it seems natural to call shapes geometric after the achievements of Babylonians, Egyptians, and later on the Greeks with what we know from Euclidean geometry. But was the notion of geometrical abstract shapes understood by the Elamites? To be able to answer these questions, I followed a rational process by trying to redefine these concepts. Starting with geometry, I traced back the history of abstract geometric thinking and figured out that the ability to reproduce intentional geometric forms has been with human beings from tens of thousands of years. There are over 5,000 geometric paintings recorded in 156 Paleolithic European caves, dated from 40,000 to 10,000 years ago. I had also to figure out whether the Elamites intended to engrave symmetrical forms. For this, I worked with the signs attested the most in the inscription and analyzed them in all the objects. This is the sign representing the sound A. I detached it from all its occurrences and scaled it to the same size to remove the proportions factors and focus on its skeleton. I did not notice any asymmetrical pattern. I then traced each sign using being as loyal as possible to the inscriptions. And then using the superimposition technique to achieve the average shape of the sign. The result, the denser area, tends toward a symmetrical diamond. So I repeated the process with the sign representing the sound re, which is more complex. And I could draw the same conclusion. Now about consistency. I noticed that the similarities between identical signs are not negligible, which shows an intention to reproduce the same forms in an inscription. I then compared different signs made with similar shapes. I could also observe a convincing level of shared features between them, making each object coherent and consistent as a whole, a phenomenon that cannot be accidental. In my analysis, consistent patterns in proportions emerged as well. For example, you can see we have always these proportions between the sound, the diamond shape and the sound representing a red. Now let's look at abstraction. Although there is a debate over whether Linear Elamite is developed from the Proto-Elamite script or not, scholars agree on one thing, that there is a visual connection between the signs in the two scripts. Most Linear Elamite signs have potential visual equivalents in Proto-Elamite. The signs in both writing systems are abstract forms that do not seem to represent any object or being. So in the process of evolution, the science has become more simple and stylized. In Linear Elamite, the imprint of tool is blurred, and we are left with the more graphic contours rather than embossed imprints. For example, the round imprints you can see here in Proto-Elamite tablets have evolved to just the contour of the circle. The triangular strokes, those were reduced to thin lines. Additionally, the previously detached strokes become more connected and start forming integrated shapes. And also, there is one inscription that stands out in the 43 objects. This is the exceptional inscription Q, or Marv-vessel. The inscription on these objects seems to be meticulously planned out. Similar forms are almost identical in shape and size. Spacing very well calculated. The signs are centered vertically between the two lines. So the Marv-vessel is a clue in confirming that the engraver's intention were symmetrical, geometric, and consistent signs. Speaking of engraving, when working on an engraved script, the analysis of the material and tools can help the designer through better understanding how the forms were shaped. This is why I try to experiment engravings on stone, metal, and clay with different tools. There is no information about what tools were used to engrave Linear Elamite, but based on observation, practical tests, and also by looking at early Greek inscriptions, I could make some hypotheses that helped me in design decisions. For example, in the inscription, the strokes are the thickest somewhere in the middle and then fade away at their extremities. I analyzed how potentially the combination of a round tool and the curved surface contributed to this trait. We can see how pressure and tilting can increase the line length as well. What you saw was a glimpse into the parts of my research that resulted in my typographic solution, hot empty typeface. Let me take you through a brief overview of my design process. So this is some of the glyphs. The dominant shape in this writing system is a diamond shape. By adding elements inside and outside this shape, we can form other signs. So for me, it was that's the first thing to focus on. So I kind of achieved a system in which I reserve some space on the top and the bottom of the diamond shape. So the optical size of these elements remains kind of coherent through all the character. And then there are other elements like, for example, red that becomes longer because they don't have these elements. So the system, eventually, by putting all the signs in this system, I achieved the system with 4 different heights. Most of the signs easily fit in the system, and they actually respect the proportions seen in the inscriptions. But of course, I didn't want the grid to lead my design, so there are some exceptions that they are not putting in the same sizes. I also had to test this this typeface with Arabic and English, because mostly it is used in academic purposes and in articles in these two languages, in Farsi and in English. I made them bigger because most of the time the lines are thinner. So by making them bigger than the x height, than the ascenders and descenders, I could, they are not unnoticeable in the line using the Latin or Arabic. There are two different styles. There is bold version and there is a regular one. The bold version can be used with the bold versions of Latin and Arabic. There is also two other different styles, which is only the stroke version. I removed the trace of the tool and the contrast. This is completely graphic representations of the sounds. I also introduced a feature in this typeface when by typing asterisk after a sign, you can have a hashur superimposed on the signs. This is particularly handy because many of the signs are, because of the erosion and on the objects, they are not readable or partially readable. So I can represent how severe they are damaged or completely not readable. For now, it is not in Unicode, this writing system. So I tried to put an input method. I tried to imagine an input method which is based on Latin script. The reason for that is that Latin script is alphabetic. So by typing phonetically, we can achieve to that. For Arabic, it would be more complicated because the vowels becomes diacritics. Although even after becoming Unicode, there would not be keyboard for, so these kind of input methods can be handy and can help us. So this is the 4 different levels of inscription of an object. And some example of transcription of these objects. And here is the complete glyph set, about 300 of them. Yes, thank you for listening. Also, it is a strange time for me. I wanted to mention that 3 weeks ago, I was like in the class with my students in Beirut, but I had to leave because of the military invasion and assault on Lebanon. My students right now are displaced, and many of them are have lost family members. And it is strange for me to talk about archaeology while archaeological sites are being erased in Lebanon in a matter of seconds. So as academia members, I think and I believe that we have responsibility to put pressure on our institutions and politicians to end these atrocities. Thank you so much for listening. Questions? Yes. Yes.
I was just trying to figure out the map. You said there were about 300 glyphs with 66 syllables.
No, there is 7 vowels, 12 consonants, and 66 syllables.
Yeah.
And in total, it will be about like 66 plus 7 plus 12. But again, there is variance of each glyphs. Some glyphs based on the time they were used and the geography they were used, there are some variations. So to be able to transcribe the objects, I had to include all the variations of the glyphs in the typeface.
So there are particular ones that show more variation.
Yeah, for example, the letter, the sign representing the sound the ne has particularly many different variations. We don't know why, but it is like that. Also, I wanted to mention that there was a kind of a debate that, okay, this decipherment is so recent and maybe it is not universally accepted. As you could see, my design decisions was based on a logic out of the decipherment. So yeah, it is not depending to the decipherment. It is just the input method that I used for now, because the article when it came out, it was kind of accepted by most of the archaeologists. But this input method can change at any time. Like this is not something that can be fixed on the typeface. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Did you imagine to include your leaf set in a private use area of Unicode?
Not yet, but we are trying to write the second proposal for the Unicode, because right now it is mostly established. Of course, it is not completely, like it is 95% deciphered. There are some glyphs that we don't know still what they represent, but it doesn't like avoid us to encode it, I think. So Anshuman Pandey did the first one before the decipherment article came out, Unicode proposal. Now we'll try to do the second one and we'll see how we can get there. But no, I didn't use the private one yet. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, you mentioned your experiments with the tools in order to understand their effect on clay, for instance. Do you know there are any attempts at modeling the tools themselves, perhaps to use that to help generating new typefaces using the same kind of tools?
Actually, this is the Paleolithic, like this is the Bronze Age, actually. The Bronze Age, as one other speaker explained, they were having the ability to make any tools. Like they could do metal, wooden tools, and everything. So we suppose that the tools they were using was not so different from what we can imagine today. And based on, because Proto-Elamite was used by stylus, wooden stylus. So we can imagine that it is kind of the same, but from the trait of the quality of the shapes, I could really deduce somehow, which is completely an hypothesis, that it is a round tool used. Because it is on different materials. It is not just on clay, it is on metal, and it is on stone as well, which we don't have it in Proto-Elamite. So I think they used a round tool, which could reproduce the same effect on different objects. Yeah, this is my deduction, of course.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.